Learn English through stories. Lily often felt a heavy knot tighten in her stomach, a familiar sensation whenever the opportunity to speak English arose. Despite years of dedicated study and countless hours spent memorizing extensive vocabulary lists, her tongue often felt tied. She possessed a deep, theoretical understanding of grammar rules and complex sentence structures, yet actual verbal communication remained an insurmountable barrier. The fear of making even the slightest grammatical error or mispronouncing a common word paralyzed her completely. This pervasive anxiety made her internal world of fluent English thoughts starkly contrast with her hesitant, often silent external reality. She yearned to express herself freely, but the looming shadow of imperfection always loomed large. She remembered poring over flashcards late into the night, successfully learning hundreds of new words, confidently identifying their definitions. Her comprehension skills were quite robust. She could follow complex discussions and understand intricate plots in movies. This disparity between her receptive and productive skills fueled her quiet frustration and self-doubt. It was a constant, gnawing paradox, knowing so much, yet being able to articulate so little. Her mind would race, formulating perfect, eloquent responses, but by the time she gathered the courage to speak, the moment had often passed. The words seemed to dissolve on the tip of her tongue, leaving only awkward silence. "I don't want to make mistakes, but I always do," she'd often lament to herself in a whisper, her voice tinged with deep disappointment. This recurring internal monologue chipped away at her already fragile confidence, making each subsequent attempt at conversation feel like an even greater, more daunting challenge. She harbored a secret dream of effortless English conversation, envisioning herself engaging in lively debates and sharing personal anecdotes with ease. The image of confidently talking with anyone, anywhere, without hesitation or self-consciousness, was a powerful motivator, yet it felt perpetually out of reach, like a mirage. This pervasive fear of judgment held her captive, trapping her potential within unspoken words. It wasn't just about speaking correctly, it was about the perceived humiliation of faltering in front of others. This mental block prevented her from truly engaging, isolating her from many social and learning opportunities that English offered. Her desire to master the art of uninhibited communication grew stronger with each passing day. She wanted to bridge the gap between her inner thoughts and outer expressions seamlessly. This yearning for verbal fluidity became a persistent whisper in her mind, a goal she desperately sought to achieve. She often felt stuck in a linguistic limbo, suspended between understanding and articulation. It was a frustrating plateau, where progress seemed to halt despite continued effort. She needed a breakthrough, a new perspective, something to disrupt her established, ineffective learning patterns and reignite her fading hope. One blustery afternoon, seeking refuge from the sudden downpour, Lily wandered into a charming, slightly dusty second-hand bookstore nestled on a quiet side street. The scent of old paper and adventure filled the air, a welcome escape from her linguistic anxieties. Her eyes scanned the packed shelves, searching for something, anything. There, tucked away on a lower shelf, a slim volume caught her eye. Its cover, a faded illustration of a Victorian street scene, seemed to possess a quiet magnetism. It was a collection of classic English short stories, a genre she hadn't actively pursued for language learning before, deeming it too advanced. A flicker of curiosity, tinged with her usual skepticism, stirred within her. She usually preferred structured grammar exercises or vocabulary drills, viewing stories as mere entertainment, not serious study tools. Could learning English through stories truly be effective? It felt like a radical, almost too simple, approach. Despite her reservations, a desperate need for a new strategy pushed her forward. She purchased the book, its worn pages promising untold worlds. It felt like a small act of rebellion against her rigid study habits, a tentative step into an unexplored territory of language acquisition. That very evening, tucked comfortably into her favorite armchair, the soft glow of a reading lamp illuminating the pages, Lily began her unexpected journey. The quiet anticipation in the room mirrored the quiet hope blossoming within her. She took a deep breath, ready to immerse herself. The first few pages were, as expected, a slow process. She frequently paused to consult her online dictionary for unfamiliar words, her finger tracing each line diligently. It felt like a puzzle, meticulously piecing together meanings, but she persevered, driven by a quiet determination to understand the narrative unfolding. Yet, something unexpected happened. As she continued, the initial effort began to lessen. She found herself less reliant on the dictionary, starting to infer meanings from context. The words began to flow more smoothly, and the story started to pull her deeper into its world. Soon, she was no longer just reading words, she was experiencing the story. The characters' emotions became her own, their dilemmas her concerns. This immersive engagement was a revelation, showing her a path to connect with the language on a far more profound and intuitive level than before. She devoured tales of brave knights embarking on perilous quests, astute detectives unraveling perplexing mysteries, and ordinary individuals navigating the complexities of everyday life. Each story offered a unique window into the English language, presenting diverse voices, settings, and narrative styles. Lily quickly realized why reading was so important, far beyond mere vocabulary expansion. It wasn't just about accumulating individual words, it was about understanding how those words interacted within meaningful contexts. The stories offered a living, breathing tapestry of language and action, not isolated fragments. She observed how sentences were naturally constructed, how phrases were typically combined, and how various grammatical structures flowed together organically. Textbooks had provided rules, but these stories demonstrated the practical, fluid application of those rules in authentic communication patterns. Idioms, which once baffled her with their non-literal meanings, began to make sense within the narrative's context. She no longer had to memorize them in isolation, their usage in the story provided a natural, memorable anchor. This contextual learning made retention significantly easier and more intuitive. Her brain started forging new connections, linking words not just by definition, but by their natural association within sentences and paragraphs. This holistic approach helped her build a robust mental network of English, moving beyond rote memorization to a more organic understanding of the language. New words, encountered within compelling narratives, began to stick effortlessly in her memory. Unlike flashcards, where words often felt isolated and quickly forgotten, the emotional and narrative context provided a powerful mnemonic device. The words became part of a larger, memorable experience. The characters' dialogues, particularly, started playing out in her head even when she wasn't reading. She would mentally rehearse their conversations, paying attention to intonation and natural speech patterns. This internal mimicry was a crucial step in developing an intuitive feel for spoken English. This quiet immersion was subtly transforming her entire thinking process. She wasn't consciously trying to translate from her native language anymore. Instead, thoughts began to form directly in English, often complete with appropriate phrasing and idiomatic expressions, a profound internal shift. She noticed that she was starting to think in English more naturally, a breakthrough she hadn't anticipated. It was like a switch had flipped, allowing her mind to process ideas directly in the target language, bypassing the cumbersome translation step that had always slowed her down. The sentences in her mind began to form with an unprecedented fluidity, almost without conscious effort or analytical struggle. This organic thought process was a stark contrast to her previous laborious attempts at constructing perfect sentences before speaking, offering a glimpse of true fluency. Still, despite these significant internal advancements, the speaking hurdle remained stubbornly in place. The transition from thinking fluently to speaking fluently felt like an insurmountable chasm. Her private thoughts flowed, but the moment she opened her mouth, the familiar anxiety resurfaced. She would rehearse entire conversations in her head, imagining herself perfectly articulate and confident, seamlessly responding to every question. These mental rehearsals were flawless, offering a fleeting taste of the fluency she craved, but they never quite prepared her for real-life interactions. The contrast between her internal English perfection and her external verbal fumbling was stark and discouraging. She wondered how to talk in English. How could she bridge this persistent gap between effortless mental formulation and hesitant vocal delivery when faced with real people? She pondered how to turn these fluent internal thoughts into external, audible words without succumbing to immediate panic or a crippling fear of judgment. The challenge wasn't just about knowing words, it was about the psychological barrier of performance in a live conversation setting. She knew intellectually that she needed English talking practice, genuine, messy, real-time interactions. But the very thought of initiating or participating in such conversations still sent shivers down her spine. Theory had taken her far, but practice felt like stepping into an unknown, intimidating arena. Then, an unexpected opportunity arose, almost as if the universe were responding to her unspoken plea. A new international student group announced its formation on campus, promising relaxed, no-pressure conversation sessions every Thursday evening. It sounded appealing, yet terrifyingly direct. The flyer for the group emphasized a supportive environment, focused on building connections rather than perfect grammar. It was designed for people from all language backgrounds, specifically to encourage English talking practice. This format seemed tailored precisely to her needs, yet her fear screamed louder. Her stomach immediately churned with a familiar mix of apprehension and reluctant hope. This was it, her chance. The internal struggle was intense. The logical part of her brain urged her forward, while the anxious part desperately sought any excuse to retreat. She considered myriad excuses to back out. I'm too busy, I'll just make a fool of myself, maybe next week. The allure of staying in her comfortable, silent bubble was strong, but the longing for fluency was finally starting to outweigh the fear of imperfection. Then, a particular story she had recently read flashed vividly in her mind. It was about a young protagonist who, despite overwhelming odds and personal fears, courageously faced their greatest challenge head-on. The character's resilience provided a sudden surge of inspiration. If they can do it in a fictional world, I can try in my real one, she thought, a spark of determination igniting within her. This small, personal resolve to emulate fictional bravery gave her the crucial push needed to overcome her inertia and attend the meeting. She arrived at the campus center that Thursday, her heart thumping a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The room buzzed with the chatter of various languages, though English was clearly the common thread. She felt simultaneously exposed and, surprisingly, a little excited for the first time. People were already mingling, some animatedly chatting, others laughing freely. The atmosphere was indeed relaxed, as promised, yet the thought of interjecting herself into a conversation still felt incredibly daunting. Her palms grew slightly sweaty, a telltale sign of her anxiety. As she stood awkwardly near the entrance, her eyes scanned the room. She noticed a new girl standing alone near the refreshment table, looking somewhat lost and clutching a map, clearly struggling to understand directions given by a volunteer. Her expression was one of quiet confusion. A tiny voice inside Lily's head urged her to help, while another, louder voice screamed, "Don't. You'll mess it up." It was a battle between empathy and ingrained fear. She took a deep, shaky breath, trying to calm her racing pulse and clear her mind. Summoning every ounce of courage she possessed, Lily took a small step forward. This was it. No more mental rehearsals, no more delaying. This was her moment for genuine English talking practice. She focused on the girl's need, pushing her own fear aside. "Can I help you?" The words came out a little shaky, a whisper at first, but they came out. They were imperfect, perhaps, but they were real, tangible sounds, not just thoughts. The girl looked up, surprise turning into a relieved smile, a moment of true connection. The girl, whose name was Anya, immediately brightened, clearly grateful for the assistance. Her smile was infectious, instantly easing some of Lily's tension. This positive reaction gave Lily a small, unexpected burst of confidence, encouraging her to continue despite her lingering nervousness. They began talking, Anya explaining her predicament with the campus map, and Lily offering directions, albeit with some hesitation. It wasn't a perfect, flowing conversation, but it was authentic. For the first time, Lily wasn't just observing English, she was actively participating in it. Lily stumbled over a few prepositions, hesitated while searching for the right adjective, and sometimes had to rephrase her sentences completely. Her ingrained habit of self-correction tried to take over, but she fought against it, focusing on conveying her meaning rather than achieving perfection. But she kept going. Each minor stumble was quickly followed by a conscious decision to push through, to not let the fear of a small error derail the entire interaction. Anya's patience was a huge comfort, making Lily feel less exposed and more encouraged to continue. Anya listened attentively, nodding, and occasionally rephrasing Lily's words to confirm understanding, which was incredibly helpful. This non-judgmental interaction allowed Lily to relax slightly, realizing that mistakes weren't catastrophes but merely part of the natural process of communication. For the very first time, Lily found herself focusing less on being grammatically flawless and more on genuinely connecting with the person in front of her. The purpose of language shifted in her mind from perfect execution to effective, empathetic communication. She realized, in that moment, that every mistake she made wasn't a mark of failure but a crucial stepping stone. Each awkward pause or incorrect verb tense simply indicated an area for future improvement, a signpost on her learning journey, not a dead end. Mistakes were, in essence, just feedback. They weren't reasons to stop, they were invitations to learn, to adjust, to try again. This profound shift in perspective was monumental, transforming her previous dread of errors into a curious acceptance and even a form of learning. This epiphany liberated her. The heavy weight of self-criticism began to lift, replaced by a newfound sense of curiosity and resilience. The fear of imperfection, which had so long crippled her, started to lose its suffocating grip, allowing her true voice to emerge. The more she talked, even with her occasional stumbles, the more natural and fluid the process felt. Each conversation built upon the last, reinforcing her confidence and making the next interaction feel marginally less intimidating. It was a gradual, but steady, upward trajectory. She started actively observing how others spoke, picking up subtle nuances in intonation, common conversational fillers, and natural rhythm. This observation became an unconscious part of her learning, augmenting what she had already absorbed from extensive English story reading. Slowly but surely, her confidence in speaking began to blossom like a hardy flower pushing through cracked pavement. The initial trembling in her voice subsided, replaced by a growing assertiveness. She realized the true power of consistent English talking practice. She no longer dreaded conversations, instead, she actively sought them out. The world transformed from a daunting linguistic minefield into an exciting landscape of potential connections. She found herself eager to engage, to learn, and to share her thoughts freely. Lily ultimately realized that the journey to fluency wasn't about eradicating every single error, but about embracing them as an inevitable and vital part of the learning adventure. Perfection was an unattainable myth. Progress, however, was a tangible, achievable reality. Reading had built an incredibly rich foundation, filling her mind with the patterns and rhythms of English. But it was the brave act of speaking, of truly engaging, that solidified that knowledge, turning passive understanding into active, confident communication. Her English voice had finally found its freedom.